Performance. And today we have an extremely special guest. His name is Dr. Scott Baird. He's been in the field for 35 years in human psychology and business performance and sales, and he's went into several different types of companies helping with this. And so welcome, Dr. Baird.
Oh, you are so kind, because you say extremely special guest. All of your guests are extremely special, but I'm thrilled to be here with you today because we share so much about the value of what human performance should be at the individual performer level.
We certainly do, and that's what this podcast is actually going to be about.
I love it.
So let's start with Griffen Hill. Let's kind of explain your company a little bit to us.
Griffen Hill is a human and organizational performance company. As you mentioned in your introduction, we've been around for about 35 years. We help individual performers and then organizations who accumulate individual performers to reach their highest levels of performance, their optimal performance. And we've been doing that in ways that just change the world. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. One of our clients that we started with, maybe a decade ago, they were doing $1.7 million in annualized revenue when we started with them. 6 years later, they were doing $100 million in annualized revenue, and the CEO said, the credit goes to Griffen Hill. What you helped us to do to elevate human performance with systems and organization changed our world. He is now a very happy equity investor, and we're now nurturing his other companies that he has since started. That's what Griffen Hill is about. It's this cascading effect of elevating performance.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. So Legends is also about getting people to potentially get to their best, the peak performance in work, in life, in health. And I know, as you're going out, because I know a little bit about your work, how did Griffen Hill get into the health aspect for performance? Because you're talking to business executives, you're helping the sales team. How did health come into what you're doing?
Jamie, absolutely brilliant question. I took a 3-year sabbatical and went and lived abroad for 3 years in Japan. No visits back to the United States during that 3 years, from 2010 to 2013. So being away from the United States for 3 years and then coming back, I was shocked. I was shocked about the obesity that plagues our nation. I was shocked about the eroding performance of individuals. Performers in organizations lived in a constant state of exhaustion. Physically, emotionally, mentally, perpetual state of exhaustion. They were prone to disease and sickness that interrupted days at work. Everything about it was just horrible. And because it eroded organizational performance, because it eroded revenues, because it eroded the growth of an organizations everywhere, it became something that we just felt like we had to take on. And that's why we've become, as it relates to executive coaching, executive development, the premier elevation of performance for executives and leaders.
Yeah, so I typically say that a different way, but I absolutely love how you say it, because I am of the personal belief. I'm of the personal belief that if one of the reasons Legends logo is the way it is, it's a triangle, and it's because it's based on there's a foundation for everything that you're doing. If you want to be good at sales, if you want to be good at whatever you're doing performance-wise, there's a foundation. You have to build the foundation, and typically that starts with the physical body. That is the physical body from the way you're sleeping, from the nutrition you're eating, to your stress levels, like you're saying. So how my question to you is, how receptive are these executives? Because they're thinking, do they kind of dismiss it at first? because they're like, I paid you to come in here to help me, with a strategic a strategic plan for the business.
Jamie, what a brilliant question. And the answer is, we let executives largely choose their own journey. If we start with strategic planning, that's fine. I'm happy to start with strategic planning. If you want to start with elevating sales revenue, I'm fine. Eventually, I'm going to be dealing with your physical health and your mental health and your physical well-being, because you cannot possibly reach peak performance. I love what you're doing here with Legends. You cannot possibly reach your peak career performance individually or organizationally unless you've got a healthy organ that is functioning in appropriate ways.
Okay, so let's talk about social connection here for a second, because I also traveled and was away for 3 years, so we kind of have actually a similar journey. I was away and then I came back, and I was sad for America. I was really sad. I think the same way you were. I was sad for America because there was so much of this giving up on themselves. When you're walking into the organizations, how are you combating that?
Well, first of all, your instinct is borne out by the research. Gallup organization recently published their research of a survey where they said fully 85% of the global workforce, not just America, of the global workforce is disengaged. They are not engaged in what's going on in the workforce, and they're not performing. That's a $7.9 trillion problem globally. So what you're experiencing here in your personal observation is absolutely borne out by the research. It's a massive problem, and we've got to solve it. Because as we move to a next generation of leaders in the United States and around the world, this next generation has got to be able to step up and create engagement, meaningful performance.
Yes.
So it's a problem that is worthy of our attention and needs to be solved.
So does obviously needs to be started at executive level to create that energy for these this younger generation that's coming to become leaders?
Yeah, man, it's so insightful. Truthfully, many of the baby boomers who are now exiting the workforce, who are still desperately holding on to the reins of control because they've grown up with a work ethic. They've grown up with these old school American values that include physical health and mental health and emotional health and a strong work ethic. So you ask the question, do they come in and say, well, gee, I really wanted strategic planning and you're trying to foist this upon me? The answer is no, because at that top level, this is how they've lived their lives. And now they're seeing their younger managers unable to create the same level of engagement in this organization that they've given their lives to. And so really it starts with them in terms of commitment, vision, and desire. But where they want us to work is take these middle manager executives and shape them, nurture them, help them to become what they can become. And it becomes really exciting.
Okay, so let's get into that. So how do you assess that? I know that you have several different assessments, but do you have to work with every individual one-on-one with coaching, or can we do it in a teamwork? What is that? I mean, with all the science behind you, I would think that you would need to do both approaches.
You're exactly right. Every problem, the solution to every problem begins with appropriate diagnosis. If you don't have the right diagnosis, the solution, the medication, the cure is going to be off. And so you start with appropriate diagnosis of an individual performer or of an organizational performance. And so there's a lot of different instruments that we use to accomplish that. And so I won't bore you with those details other than to say they are grounded in good science, meaning that they are, we use these terms of valid and reliable in everyday words, but they mean something different in a scientific sense. Valid means that it solves the problem we intend to solve, and it does so consistently, which is then reliability. It does so consistently from one problem to the next. And so the tools, the instruments, the methods, the systems we apply have scientific validity and reliability. And so without getting into the instruments, we have proven them out, meaning they solve the problems we intend to solve, and they do them consistently across all performers and all organizations.
So I think that is the biggest thing. The one word that I kept ringing in my head was consistency. With to be consistent. If I run 26 miles one day, it doesn't do me any good. If I run a mile or 2 miles every single day, it does my body a world of good. But and that's with business as well. That's with the sales strategy, meeting customers. Consistency is ourselves. I mean, that's the issue. How do we discipline ourselves to be consistent?
Jamie, you are brilliant and inspired. This is exactly why you do what you do. Look, what we know at Griffen Hill is it starts with simple transformational habits. If we can get executives, leaders, performers to develop a set of very simple, consistent habits, all of a sudden that exports, generalizes to every other aspect of their lives. And that's how we make success a habit. What you're talking about is exactly right. It's the consistency. So as an example, we talk about this in terms of strengthening a weakened will. Will and habits are really almost always a start place for an individual performer. But it's also true of organizations. There have to be organizational habits. Once we get those organizational habits right, then we can make success a habit. So I'll just give you a little story. It was just before I went to Japan. So let's see, it's 2019. It was probably just before we went we left in 2010, so probably 2009, a decade ago.
Okay.
I was presenting at a business conference, and I was talking about the importance of systems. And really, one of the things we know at Griffen Hill is it takes both a will and a system. Mm-hmm. And as we were having this conversation, I was telling these executives, look, you bring your will, I'll bring you the system. And then at the end of the conference, we were doing this panel of all the people, all the speakers, and they gathered up questions. So I don't like to do panels where the audience just raises their hand, because nobody raises their hand. They're too intimidated. Yeah. So we had them write their question on a piece of paper and then pass it to the aisle and put them in a little basket and then bring them front. The very first question that somebody pulled out was, Dr. Baird, so you say that you can bring the system, but I need to bring the will. What if I'm living in a state of weakened will?
Well, that's a great question.
And in that moment, I knew I had done harm that day. I had missed, I'm not a medical doctor, but had I been, I would have missed my Hippocratical oath because I had done harm to somebody in that audience who was struggling, perhaps desperate, maybe suicidal. And what I had said to them is, you got to bring the will, and I'll bring a system. If you can't bring the will, you just as well dry up and die. That was essentially I didn't say it that way, it wasn't intended, but that's how this person felt. And I realized that I had to solve this problem. it was only a couple of weeks later because another executive at that conference asked me to come and speak to his team in another city, a couple hundred executives, on the same topic, will and systems. And in that meeting, the first executive had a chance to raise his hand and said, what if you've got an employee who is in a state of weakened will? Well, I can tell you from that is borne out a ton of rich research about strengthening our willpower. Willpower is just another word for success habits. How do we do it consistently? How do we have a habit that leads us to success consistently? And as a result, Jamie, you talk about that foundation. At the foundation, number one thing is get healthy. And when we say get healthy, it meant 4 specific things. Number 1, sleep. What we discovered is that Americans have poor sleep habits. We sleep inadequately, we sleep in spurts, we sleep through class instead of before class, we sleep through meetings instead of before meetings. Sleep, number 1 thing.
I think I read a statistic somewhere, and you might know the numbers better than I do, but I want to vaguely say it was like 76% of Americans get less than 6 hours of sleep, where we actually really should be having 8 hours of sleep.
All the research tells us that if you're not getting between 7 and 9, so you still get room to choose here,
Yeah?
7 to 9, that's the golden range. Outside of that range, you are going to be much more susceptible to depression, illness, and mistakes. So this research is exactly why the medical industry changed everything about a residency for a newly minted MD coming out of grad school and they go into residency. It used to be, let's kill them. Let's have them always live in a sleep-deprived state.
Yeah.
But the reason that had to change is because those newly minted MDs were making 500% more life-threatening errors.
Whoa.
Is that astonishing?
Whoa.
That's what happens in our lives when we are outside of that, at least minimum 7 hours. We make 500% more life-threatening errors. Well, no wonder we're discouraged and depressed. We're screwing up at every turn. No wonder we're subject to illness and depression and discouragement and poor health. Our bodies cannot repair itself without adequate sleep.
So I've read several books because I kind of want to be a little bit of a devil's advocate here, because I've read several books and or other extremely successful firms saying, hey, push yourself. We have the baby boomers. They pushed and pushed and pushed themselves, and they've not gotten that because they're like every hour, take an hour or less of sleep so you can make more phone calls or come out with a different report. And so in a way, society has taught us to push ourselves, but we're making 500% more mistakes. But society has taught us to do 10 jumping jacks, get your heart rate up so you don't feel tired.
Jamie, it's why I started where I did about our research. All of the research at Griffen Hill is valid and reliable. It's good science. What we read in those books is somebody's rah-rah attempt to say, this is what I did. Well, baloney. They did it for 2.5 weeks and they had a great hit and that was wonderful. But it's not sustainable. Nothing about that research is valid or reliable. It's mistaken guidance. Well, if you just think, we say start with sleep. Number 2 is eat. What we ask you to do is sleep and eat. Everything I knew that it was important to me in life, I learned in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Sleep, we had this little rug or a towel and we took little rests on them in kindergarten. Sleep, get good sleep and rest. Eat, we always had a good healthy snack in kindergarten. Sleep and eat. Why? Because that's what all the recent research on food science in America, well, recent. Maybe the last 2 or 3 years we've gotten better. But the research upon which we have founded our whole system of eating was mistaken. It was misguided. The food pyramid put out by our government was designed to make us obese. If you follow that food pyramid, you will be unhealthy. You will become diabetic. It will destroy your overall health and erode. Why? Because it was based on faulty science. The same is true of those who say sleep 4 hours a night, or sleep in 4-hour shifts, or cut 1 hour of sleep off. So what do? We guilt people into showing up for work early, staying late. Remember that recent research from Gallup? 85% of the global workforce is disengaged. They're showing up, but they cannot perform. They don't have the wherewithal to have their body perform at work. So it's doing them no good at all. That's what creates a $7.9 trillion problem. Poor research around somebody who's misguided about, you can get by on an hour less sleep.
So I'm going to add some statistics to that. We have depression rising 20%. We have autism that's doubled since the year of 2012.
Wow.
We have 1 in every 4 women expected to have some type of autoimmune disease, and 1 in every 6 men to develop some type of autoimmune disease here in America because of the types of food that are presented to us and that we're choosing to eat.
Socialized really an entire, multiple generations now to think the wrong way about food. And it is destructive. And this is why I love the work you're doing, Jamie, because until we solve, you said the base of the pyramid. I told you sleep, eat. The third one is move. Sleep, eat, move. And the fourth one of get healthy is gratitude. And we live in this society that is self-serving, selfish, all about self. We take self-ease. Everything is all internal. And nothing is about gratitude for what others have done for us or with us or the foundation they've given to us. One of the great problems of this millennial generation in leadership is all the research demonstrates that they want to be disconnected from all the history of the organization. They don't care about it. That legacy of the business, they don't care about it. And that's a problem because it is all about here, now, immediacy and nothing about gratitude. So if we're going to get this base of your Legends pyramid right, sleep, eat, move, gratitude. Those 4 things are essential, and all 4 of them are demonstrated in the research that we've done. If we're going to strengthen a weakened will, as you talk about depression on increase, double digit, I did not know that in our current research. Brilliant work, nicely done. If we're going to solve those, sleep, eat, move, gratitude, you got to get those 4 things right. And then we can move on.
Let's talk about legacy for a little bit because just because regardless if you're choosing to live a legacy, you have a legacy, right? There is a legacy that you're leaving on. And we have this younger generation that just wants to say, I want to make an impact in the organization. That's what a lot of them I hear say. I want to make an impact in the organization. But the truth is, and a lot of them actually think they're natural leaders from my experience and my interactions with them. And they are. We don't want to discourage that. We don't want to. We want to tell. We don't want to discourage. We don't want to discourage any of that. But how? So how do we instill gratitude? How I think because that's so important. How do we instill gratitude?
So first of all, I really appreciate, we don't want to discourage that in them. It's easy for us to take pot shots at this millennial generation. The truth is, there has never been a generation as intelligent, as prepared, as articulate as this millennial generation. And when we talk about they want to have an impact. Now here's part of the problem. They want to have impact without responsibility. So look, let me speak to you millennial leaders out there. It's wonderful that you want to have an impact. Accept the responsibility to make an impact. Accept the responsibility that goes with it. I want to be a leader. I want the organization to rotate around me, to do what I want it to do in order to be, they should take all my suggestions and act on them. But notice that somebody else ought to take my brilliant suggestion and act on it. Dude, you've got to be the actor. Take responsibility, step up, and act on what you think needs to be done. Now, as to your specific question, it's really quite simple. There are a lot of different gratitude kinds of exercises that you can do, as illustrated by many of the great researchers in this space, probably starting with Emmons and McCullough. They're probably the premier pro-psychology researchers as it relates to gratitude. Others have followed in their footsteps. But they found that if you would do something as simple as sitting down and engaging in a gratitude exercise every day. By gratitude exercise, I simply mean think of someone who has influenced you for good. It might be a teacher that shaped the way you think or that taught you an important principle. Pen a thank you note to that person and put it in the mail. Gratitude exercise for the day, done. It might be reaching out to a mentor and just stopping them in the hallway or poking your head into their cubicle and saying, hey, you might not know this, but what you did when you blank, blank, blank really helped me. It elevated me. It helped me to see things more clearly. Thank you for that. Gratitude exercise, done for the day. It might be as simple as in Emmons and McCullough, they suggested just writing a list of 10 things every day. I am grateful for. I am grateful for. I am grateful for. For me, I'll tell you something that's even more impactful. I am grateful for fill in the blank because fill in the blank. Do that 3 times a day. It'll take you 2 or 3 minutes. But consistency. If you will do that, it will change that gratitude piece in your life, and it will connect you with all the performance aspects, the performance enhancement associated with those gratitude principles is astonishing. Gratitude may be the new miracle drug for human performance. It changes everything. I hope that was along the lines of what you hoped
that's
for.
amazing. I have a little exercise that I do every morning that I learned at a Tony Robbins actually event, where I take 3 minutes and I kind of focus on my family and my loved ones, and I kind of circle it out, and then what am I grateful for business? What am I grateful for that I don't know in the world, or that I've seen that day, or the air that I'm that's brushing across my face when I'm walking outside. I always end up going to the 5 elements of the earth: air, fire, water, because those naturally are easy for me to have gratitude for. Because they make me personally feel alive.
Yeah, and that's one of the, Jamie, I just love what you're saying here. Look, that's legacy. As you talked about the nearer, close-in family members, loved ones, moving out to maybe extended family, and then business associations, mentors, and then to the world in which we live in an elemental sort of way. All of that is what legacy is about. So very important. And look, you can't have a legend without legacy, right? So ding, 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 we're right back to where you started and this great organization that you have formed and the way you're impacting health, fitness, and peak performance in individuals. Kudos to Jamie.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think it is all of us, it takes all of us to make a difference. And if you just make a small little difference in yourself, right? Several things that you've said to me have made it.
We're making an observation about knowledge, that it's not just enough to be exposed to it. So
Well,
teach me.
there has to be some type of massive action that you take towards towards the knowledge, because the knowledge is not powerful just in itself.
Can I talk to you about High Performance Journal?
I
Okay,
love it.
so
I
we've
love it.
talked about the importance of reflecting and writing. It really does influence metacognition, intentionality, self-awareness, focus in the lives of these executives that we work with. But here's where it starts. There are three pieces. Coming out of every coaching session, we will ask, whether it's a group coaching session or an individual coaching session, we ask them to stop and reflect and write. What 3 to 5 things were important to you in this conversation? First of all, think about learning. You talk about consuming knowledge. We're now engaging in what we call learning elaboration. Because if I have to think about what did we just talk about, I have to go to my gray matter and pull it back out. Retrieval makes us retain. So it's not enough to just put stuff in. Exercising retrieval of information is part of what strengthens retention of information. That's learning elaboration. So when we say, from this coaching session, what 3 to 5 things were important to you, they have to go retrieve. They have to go say, well, what did we talk about? If I had a mental mind map for what we just did, or if I had bullet points for what we just did, what would they be? And then I have to make an evaluative judgment. So that's learning elaboration. I have to choose from all this stuff we just talked about what was important. Now we're enhancing retrieval again. We're enhancing retention again. But then we start there and we go to the next step. And we say, okay, that's great. Now you've got knowledge. You've got information and knowledge. That's what Reflect and Write is mostly about. But here's where High Performance Journal now differs. Because now we say, okay, based on those 3 to 5 things that were important to you, what do you want to have happen in your life? What is your desired outcome based on that knowledge that you just wrote? Now we turn knowledge into a goal orientation. Having a goal is way more powerful than having information. So we just took information and we gave it a goal orientation. What do you want to have happen with that information in your life? Now we go to the next step and we say, okay, what are you willing to commit to do in order to make that thing happen? Now we just turned a goal orientation into a bias for action, an action orientation. Action is way more powerful than goal. So we just get this cascading effect of here's information and knowledge. What do you want to have happen with it? What's your desired outcome?
Yeah.
What are you willing to commit to do to make that happen in your life? You can see why it's a high performance journal. Because now we're consumers of that information in ways that we're acting upon it. In small ways, you said it earlier, consistently every day. And so for the next 5 days after you've captured that, we don't say go do that again. No. We say go evaluate that every day for the next 5 days. So tomorrow you're going to come in and say, Jamie talked to me about this stuff, I can't remember what. Oh yeah, it was these 3 to 5 things. If you were to look at an EKG or a PET scan, better yet, a PET scan of your brain activity while you were in the classroom learning it, and now again as you're reflecting and writing about it, it would be the same. The law of learning is repetition. So now what happens in day 2 of your high performance journal is you're getting a repetition of day 1. And then you're saying, oh, wow, those 3 to 5 things were really important to me. And in fact, now I get to look at my desired outcome. This is what I wanted to have happen. Wow, that's important to me. And now these are the 1 to 3 things I committed to do. Remember I said take responsibility for those good ideas, commit to them, act upon them? What 1 to 3 things did I commit to do? And now you go back and say, okay, how am I doing? I get to re-energize learning elaboration. I get repetition, the law of learning. But now I also get to evaluate myself on 5 dimensions of achievement. It starts with my own will and motivation. With regard to those 3 to 5 things, with regard to my desired outcome, with regard to my commitments to act, how did I do on will and motivation today? Did I accomplish? Was I motivated to act? How about confidence? Did I act with confidence or did I act with fear?
Oh, that's brilliant.
Next, I get to say, how about visualizing outcomes? Could I see myself accomplishing my desired outcome as I engaged on every activity? What about an action orientation? Did I act? And then finally, decision making. Did I make good decisions today? That's what you do for the next 5 days, and then you just say, okay, what am I celebrating? You're reflecting right now is, what am I celebrating? 3 things at least, 3 to 5 things that I'm celebrating about my performance today. And then if needed, okay, what 1 thing do I need to do to get on track, to get where I want to be? Helpful observation. That's good positive psychology. It's good positive management. It's good positive leadership. And it affects change. We no longer have disengaged performers on your team because they're engaged in high performance journal, and it changes their lives.
Are you having them do this by the end of the day at work, like before they leave the office?
It's a great question.
How are you managing that when you're doing that with these companies?
Remember, these are transformational habits. If you want a kernel of a start place, well, it starts with sleep, eat, move, and gratitude. But moving up from there, it's reflect and write. Get engaged in your high performance journal in this way. And to that point of when, I ask them to evaluate. Do you think you would do this most consistently first thing in the morning when you first get started with your work day? Do you think you do it most consistently right after lunch as you restart your work day? Do you think you do it best at the end of your workday as you reflect on what took place? And then we let them choose. The research tells us it doesn't matter. There are differences. For example, first thing in the morning kind of sets your day, but last thing at night lets you puzzle on it all night in your sleep. Our minds are active. So it doesn't matter when. What matters is that you choose. And then that you put it on your calendar. Because if you don't put it on your calendar, you will not do this. So I like those 3 options, but personally, I know that if I do this every night at 9 p.m., that's my best window. I will be the best performer at evaluating the entirety of my day and preparing my mind to puzzle on what I'm trying to accomplish tomorrow just before I go to sleep. Because then I've got the day planned out tomorrow. I don't have to worry about it. I can say, mind, go to work, and I've done my job, and I can now rest and let my body heal.
So personally, I can see that this helped a lot of teenagers with test anxiety and college students actually is one. But personally, how has it impacted your own life in a personal way?
I'm not a very bright person. I am, of all people, at very best, Jamie, I reach as high as I can to get to average. But as it relates to achievement and performance in my life, it's much different. Lots of people are capable of this, but I don't know very many people who have ridden their bicycle from coast to coast. I don't know very many people that have written a book. I don't know very many people that have accomplished the successful startup and exit of successful organizations.
Well, how long have you been in business?
I've been at this for more than 30 years.
So the average company, people, I want you to know this, the average company, less than 95% of companies that are started are still open, their doors are open at the 10-year mark.
Yeah.
You are up top, you are part of the 5%.
80% gone in the first 5 years, another 15% gone in the next 5 years, and 5% ever survive. So look, I am really a very, at best, ordinary. But because I give myself over to the habits of success, it transforms what I can accomplish.
That's so beautiful.
That's the key.
Well, and therefore your, if you want to say that, your smarts, your intellect has risen because you've consistently done and taken those actions to recall on your memory, right? You've written things down.
You know, so insightful. Let's just take a look back. We mentioned Timothy Galway's performance formula. Our performance equals our potential minus interference. I love this formula, and we utilize it all the time. My one complaint might be that it seems in that formula that our potential is finite. But what I find is that our potential is infinite. And that when we learn, our potential just grew. When we achieve something, our potential just grew. So we might just talk about potential not as a finite, whatever you're born with, you're stuck with, you are what you are. Not at all. Because the more I learn, the more I apply, the more I do, the more I grow. My potential for increased performance elevates.
Wow. That's really insightful. That's really, really insightful. Your talks or a presentation that you did, and you were
I'm
talking
so sorry.
about. No, it was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. It was on the Cognitive Performance Index.
Oh.
And you were talking about, I don't remember, you were talking about a physician that won the Nobel Prize. I don't remember his name. I did remember that he won the Nobel Prize. But he ended up discovering this because of, he was working with epileptic patients. And for me, right, I'm in this CBD space, and CBD got its attention from epilepsy. So I kind of want to go into what that study found, because I know you're a supporter, or, you've done some research with CBD in the cannabis space. So I want to kind of get your just thoughts on both of those perspectives.
Yeah, look, you take us right back to what we think about our heart as being the center of our being. It's our mind, it's our brain, it's the way we function. And the research done here was so significant to begin to understand how the brain functions. One of the things that for me has been most insightful about the way the brain functions actually came not from that research on the brain. It came from research on Ratkin, I think it is. I don't have it on my at the top of mind because I wasn't thinking we were going here today. But the book Spark, which is really all about exercise. This is what some of his research in that book shed light on for me. I've So if we go back to sleep, eat, move, you gotta move.
Yeah.
You gotta move.
Yeah.
And notice that I don't say you gotta exercise. I say you gotta move. You gotta move your body. And then gratitude. So it leads us to that notion of movement and motion. I love fitness. I'm not a very good athlete, but I work at it consistently, daily. That's what riding across America is about. It's something you can do every day.
It's on my bucket list.
Okay, we should do it.
list.
It's a delightful experience. But this is my research, my own experience with fitness and health, and the research that you will read from most people. You'll always read about the endorphin high, the runner's high. When you exercise vigorously, that your body releases endorphins, and it gives you this sense of high. Well, endorphins are really quite amazing. Physiologically, they give you a sense of well-being greater than any false stimulant out there. There's some argument, however, that those endorphins released by the body in that state might not cross the blood-brain barrier. There's some research that is uncertain about that, unless there's new research out since I've seen it. Well, if that's true, what is it that creates the runner's high? Is it the endorphins? Because this is what we know about the brain, that inside the brain, we have cannabinoid receptors.
Yep.
It's the cannabinoid in us that does cross the blood-brain barrier and into the brain, and maybe that's where the well-being comes. For me, it is the biggest scientific underscoring about the power of CBD oils on human well-being as it relates to the brain, because those receptors are there. It tells me that my brain, my body is wired for this. And in my normal nutrition, the way we've stripped out all the nutritional benefits of our food, my body is not getting those naturally anymore. But CBD oil can do that for me.
Is replenishing.
It can replenish
Is
it.
replenishing.
And it passes the blood-brain barrier in ways that it can soothe epilepsy, that it can soothe depression, that it can soothe movement disorders of all kinds. So the thing that we're seeing in your field of work, that the research is catching up with. The research is just catching up with the heuristic evidence, the rule of thumb evidence. We see that when children who are subject to any kind of epileptic seizure or other, it might not even be epilepsy, but movement disorder, that for some reason that we're still figuring it out, the brain is soothed.
Yeah.
Well, it's because we've got cannabinoid receptors in our brain and throughout our bodies. There is this neural network of cannabinoid receptors in our whole body, including in the brain.
And I'm going to add to this because I think this is so fascinating. We wouldn't have this marijuana, right? Wouldn't have any of the movement that it does if it wasn't for this cannabinoid system in our body, this endo, meaning inside the body, system in our body. It wouldn't have, we wouldn't even be talking about marijuana if it wasn't, because it is the plant that helped us discover this endocannabinoid system in the body. But if we have had this system in our body, we have been consuming cannabinoids, and most people, you guys have been consuming cannabinoids through your black pepper, through rosemary, through chocolate. We've been consuming them. It just makes sense in my mind that we have a plant out there that has a variety of cannabinoids that is that we can utilize to help upregulate or downregulate, personalize, the medicine to me.
Here's where the problem is, that we have beat up this marijuana plant because of its misuse and misguided use, to the point that you're some kind of wacko radical because of what you are doing with this to heal and to make a difference. Well, we're learning that that's just not true. But in the same way that we have done harm to our food system, we have misengineered this plant to elevate its psychotic influences rather than its helpful influences, to the degree that we then disregard it for its healthy attributes and benefits. It's a mistake.
One more note that I want to talk to you about that I found really interesting earlier in our conversation, and it had to do with Japan, coming home from Japan, coming back to America. There is a different psychology that, most people are aware of, the psychology from the East over to the Western psychology, that their thought processes are not the same. And you are one of the rare individuals that have been able to, embrace 3 years, just embrace that in a way, let go of this Western philosophy and try to, because I know you try to understand, right? Your whole thing is about understanding human nature, human potential. And can we talk about the shift, the psychology shift over there versus here, and how that personally impacted you?
There is a patience culture. In these two ways, this Occident versus Orient culture. I met a business for generations. Seto, or porcelain in Japanese, is for porcelain or pottery in Japanese, referencing this little community where this pottery master had lived for generations, going back to the ancient emperors. I had this great opportunity to work with him. He had students from all over the world working in his teeny little outback studio, from Australia, from Germany, from the United States. They sought him out to be able to work under this master. And he was teaching us, my little group of friends, how to knead the clay. And I kneaded bread with my mother when I was a boy. I knew how to do this, and I had it figured out. And so I'm kneading away. I said, how long does it take to master this? These interns that you have. And he said, it will take them 3 years. 3 years. Well, that's consistent with all kinds of other research that we know. To become a master, it takes 10,000 hours. We'll do the math. It takes you 3 years to become a master at something. That is the Oriental mindset. The patience to become a master at what they do. To put in the effort, to be able to say, the organization doesn't have to rotate around me today. I'm willing to put in the effort to become a master here, contribute and make a difference. illustration was huge for me. To the Oriental mindset, the pay, to pay the price at something is.
And I think that goes back to if we circle that back to the business and what you're trying to do, is it takes time to become a master in anything that you do.
It does.
And you have to be selective. You have to be selective.
We've talked here about habits, transformational habits, and the will, the relationship between our strength and a weakened will and our habits. One of my favorite poems is this poem by Ella Wheeler Wilcox, entitled Will. She has another one entitled Will too, so you might find it by determination. A phrase that that suggests that everything we choose to do should be aligned with our desired outcome. Even the things we choose not to do are because we're in line with our desired outcome. So you have to be, we've spoken of Warren Buffett, but one of the things that he coaches other business people to do is learn to say no. You've got to be able to say, I'm not going to go down a particular course because it will be a distraction from what Ella Wilcox calls the great aim, my one great aim. I have to say no to that activity because it will take me away from my one great aim. Ella Wheeler Wilcox, amazing.
Yeah, and I can see how, well, businesses, there's several different, even in your context, with different business strategies and even health strategies, that you have to be selective on what path you choose.
Yeah.
Most people that make the money is they've selected and say, I'm going to be the best in X, Y, X, right? I don't care about Y and Z. I'm going to be this master in this. I think that's amazing.
And that takes the patience and commitment to become a master. If you're distracted by every shiny thing that comes along, mastery is beyond your reach.
So how do we get this book? How do we get this book?
Well, okay, so Be Brilliant is really about critical thinking. It's about asking the right questions. It's about knowing how to ask others the right questions to stimulate discoveries in them. So therefore it's about leadership, but it's about leadership that is not dictatorial, but it is about discovery. So again, a bit of the Oriental mind displayed. As it's written, it's targeted specifically to salespeople. But it's not about sales. It's about leadership. Leadership is about persuasion. It's about the art of enlisting others in this common objective and goal and being able to pursue it. So, Be Brilliant. It's out there.
But how about the High Performance Journal?
Oh, High Performance
How do
Journal is such...
How do we get this? How do we get that?
Look, the High Performance Journal is such a gift to the world. You need to get connected with the High Performance Journal. This is what I would say. You can email me at any time. You can call on my cell phone. And you might leave a message and get a phone call back 2.5 weeks later because I'm engaged in something else. But I will get back to you, won't I, Chuck?
Yes, he does. He absolutely does.
So, but drop me an email, drop me a note. Scott Baird or Scott B at griffinhill.com. Drop me a note. I'll figure out a way to get this to you. Scott B at griffinhill.com. And we'll figure out a way to help.
Okay. Well, I love that, and thank you for what you're doing. I think it's absolutely amazing and a treasure to the world, and I think you are leaving your own legacy and creating legacies for all of these companies and these salespeople. You're impacting individuals, and that's what it's about. So thank you.
Well, we would say in Japanese, kochiru koso, meaning, and the same to you, the impact that you are now having on thought, shaping ideas, hence policy around very important issues and topics is groundbreaking. And I applaud you for it. Well done.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And great to be with you today.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And thanks for watching Legends Health, Wellness, and Performance podcast. Thanks again.
Good to be with you.